Hello everyone, Detective Frost here. Welcome back to the True Crime series, The Cold Files. File number 01A, The Last Road Before Maura Murray Vanished. On a cold February night in New Hampshire, a black Saturn sat damaged on the side of Route 112. Snow lined the road. The trees were dark and close. To anyone passing by, it may have looked like a simple accident, a car that had slid, struck something, and come to rest in the wrong place at the wrong time. But the driver had been there, only minutes earlier. Her name was Maura Murray. She was 21 years old, a nursing student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, with classes, responsibilities, and people who expected to see her again. Earlier that day, Maura had left campus in that same black Saturn. Before leaving, she sent messages saying she would be away for a week because of a death in the family. Later, her family would say no one had died. That detail, quiet as it seemed, would become one of the first signs that something about Maura's trip was difficult to understand. That evening, after the crash, a bus driver stopped and spoke to her. Maura told him she had already called for help, but in that area, there was no cell service. The driver left to report the accident, and when police arrived at 7:46 p.m., the car was still there. Her belongings were still there. Maura was not. What makes this case so unsettling is not only that a young woman disappeared from a rural road, it is how narrow the window was, how ordinary the scene first appeared, how easily those few minutes could have been misunderstood. So the question at the center of this story is simple, but deeply disturbing. What happened between the moment Maura Murray was last seen beside her car and the moment police arrived? To understand that question, we have to go back to the hours before the crash, to the choices Maura made, the messages she sent, and the quiet signs that her journey had begun long before anyone realized something was wrong. On February 9th, 2004, Maura Murray left Amherst, Massachusetts, in her black Saturn. Before she drove away, there were signs that she had been preparing for some kind of trip. According to reports, she had looked up directions to several possible destinations, including areas in the Berkshires, Burlington, Vermont, and New Hampshire. She had also called about lodging, withdrawn $280, and purchased alcohol before leaving town. But what is known stops being clear once Maura's car reached Route 112, near Woodsville, New Hampshire. At around 7:27 that evening, her Saturn was found after a crash on a dark rural road. The area was quiet, cold, and isolated. There were houses nearby, but not many. The kind of place where a passing car might be remembered, and where a few minutes could feel much longer than they really were. A school bus driver came across the scene and stopped to speak with Maura. She was outside or near the vehicle, and he asked if she needed help. Maura refused. She told him she had already called AAA. At first, that may have sounded like an ordinary response from someone who had just been in a minor accident. Maybe she was embarrassed. Maybe she wanted space. Maybe she believed help was already coming. But that explanation had one problem. The area reportedly had no cell service, and later, AAA had no record of receiving a call from Maura. The bus driver left and contacted authorities. When police arrived at 7:46 p.m., less than 20 minutes after the crash was first reported, the Saturn was still there. Maura was gone. Sometimes, the most haunting mysteries are not built around hours or days, but around a few missing minutes. In Maura's case, the window was painfully small. She had been seen alive after the crash. Someone had spoken to her. Help was on the way. And yet, before police could reach the scene, she disappeared from the road. The most important detail from that roadside encounter may be the one that sounded ordinary at first. Maura said she had already called AAA, because if there was no cell service and no record of that call, then what was she really trying to do in that moment? There are several possibilities, and none of them can be treated as certain. She may have been trying to make the bus driver leave. She may have been confused, afraid, or panicking after the crash. She may have wanted to avoid speaking with police, or she may have believed she had a reason to keep moving before anyone arrived. At the time, it could have been understood in the simplest way. A young woman in trouble, refusing help because she thought she could handle the situation herself. But as the years passed, that small statement became harder to ignore. It sat directly in the middle of the mystery, after the crash, before the police, and during one of the last known interactions anyone had with Maura. When officers checked the Saturn, they found it locked. Many of Maura's personal belongings were still inside, but some important items were not found, including her phone, bank card, credit cards, and some of the alcohol she had purchased earlier. There was no clear sign of a crime at the scene. That mattered, because in the early stage of the investigation, police leaned toward the possibility that Maura had left on her own. She had already taken steps that suggested a planned trip. She had left campus without clearly telling people where she was going, and she had apparently walked away from the crash before officers arrived. But that interpretation did not answer the larger question. If Maura left on foot, where did she go? If she entered the woods, why was there no confirmed trace of her? If she accepted a ride, who picked her up? And if she was trying to avoid help, what was she trying to avoid? Search efforts expanded around the crash site, into wooded areas, along nearby roads, and around properties considered suspicious. A dog later followed Maura's scent for about 100 yards before the trail ended. Investigators later believed this could suggest she left the area in another vehicle, though it did not prove it. Over time, other possible leads were examined. Reports mention items and locations that drew attention, including a rusty knife, a suspicious backpack, a nearby house, and bone fragments found near Loon Mountain. But none of these led to a confirmed answer about what happened to Maura. And that is what makes this case so difficult. There were many details, but no final connection. There were possible clues, but no conclusion. There were theories, but none that could fully explain the timeline. The known facts remain narrow and troubling. Maura left school on February 9th. She sent messages saying she would be gone because of a death in the family, though her family later said no one had died. She prepared for a trip, but did not clearly tell anyone her destination. Her car crashed near Woodsville. She spoke to a bus driver. She said she had called AAA. She disappeared before police arrived, and some of her important belongings were missing from the car. In 2009, the case was transferred to New Hampshire's cold case unit and treated as a suspicious disappearance. But there has never been an official conclusion explaining what happened to Maura after she left the Saturn. For her family, that absence of an answer has meant years without real closure. Her father has said he believes she was abducted and may have died. Others have suggested she may have walked into the woods, taken a ride from a stranger, tried to disappear, or become the victim of a crime. But none of those theories has been proven. As the case gained attention, it became one of the most discussed missing person mysteries of the internet era, covered by programs such as 2020, Disappeared, and Oxygen documentaries. But attention is not the same as resolution. Public theories can multiply quickly, while the truth remains just as far away. What remains is a young woman, a damaged car, a rural road, and a very small window of time. The disturbing part is not only that Maura Murray vanished, it is the feeling that the answer may have been very close to the scene, only a few minutes away, a short distance down the road, or hidden inside an encounter no one else witnessed. And before we can understand the theories, we have to look carefully at what those missing minutes leave behind. Maura Murray's case is difficult because it resists a simple explanation. Some details seem to suggest planning. Others suggest confusion, fear, or panic. And others point towards something that may have happened only after she left the car. But none of those pieces, on their own, can tell the full truth. That is what makes the small details so hard to let go of. The email about a death in the family, the preparations before the trip, the locked car, the missing belongings, and above all, the quiet statement that she had already called AAA, a statement that sounded ordinary in the moment, but later became one of the most difficult parts of the case to understand. More than anything, this story is about how a few minutes can change the direction of an investigation for years. Between 7:27 p.m. and 7:46 p.m. on Route 112, Maura was there. Then she was not. She said help had already been called. Minutes later, help arrived, but Maura was gone. And more than 2 decades later, the question remains, what happened on that dark road before the police got there? Maura's disappearance leaves behind a road, a car, and a few minutes no one can fully explain. But this would not be the only case where small pieces of evidence seem to say more than they first appeared to. 10 years later, in the mountains of Panama, 2 young women walked into a cloud forest with phones, a camera, and plans for a normal hike. What came back told a much stranger story. File number 01B, the camera that recorded the final hours. More than 10 weeks after two young women vanished in the Panamanian jungle, a blue backpack was found near a river, close to the village of Alto Romero. It was not buried. It was not hidden deep underground. It was simply there, beside the water, carrying the objects that had gone missing with them. Inside were their phones, a camera, cash, sunglasses, an insurance card, a water bottle, and other personal belongings. Ordinary things, the kind travelers carry without thinking. But by the time they were found, those objects had become something else. They were no longer just possessions. They were fragments of a story no one has ever been able to fully explain. The camera held nearly 90 photos taken in darkness on the night of April 8th. The phones showed repeated attempts to reach emergency services, calls that never connected because the jungle had no signal. Together, these records did not solve the case. In some ways, they made it more unsettling. The young women were Kris Kremers, 21, and Lisanne Froon, 22. Both were students from the Netherlands. In March of 2014, they traveled to Panama to study Spanish, explore the area, and volunteer with children near Boquete, a mountain town close to the Baru volcano. At first, there was nothing about the trip that seemed unusual. On April 1st, Kris and Lisanne set out on the El Pianista Trail, a hiking route that passes through the cloud forest near Boquete. They were reportedly starting a normal daytime hike, two young travelers in a new country, following a path that many others had walked before. But they did not return, and the next morning, when they missed an important appointment with a local guide, the first quiet concern began to turn into something far more serious. To understand what happened, we have to begin with that walk into the forest, before the backpack, before the night photos, and before the calls for help that never went through. In March of 2014, Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon arrived in Panama. They were young, far from home, and doing what many students hope to do at that age: learn a new language, experience another country, and take part in work that felt meaningful. They stayed in the Boquete area, a mountain town near the Baru volcano, known for its natural scenery, cooler climate, and hiking routes that pass through dense cloud forest. To travelers, Boquete could feel peaceful and open, but beyond the familiar parts of town, the landscape changed quickly. Trails narrowed, the forest became thick, and in some areas, phone signal became unreliable or disappeared entirely. On April 1st, 2014, Kris and Lisanne set out on the El Pianista Trail. According to reports, they began the hike at around 11 in the morning. At first, nothing about it appeared unusual. It seemed like a normal daytime walk by two young women exploring a place they had recently arrived in. But after that hike, they did not return. The next morning, they missed an appointment with a local guide. That was one of the first clear signs that something was wrong. A missed meeting can sometimes be explained by confusion, a changed plan, or poor communication. But in this case, the silence continued. Kris and Lisanne were not seen back in town. They did not contact their host family. They did not explain where they had gone. Then investigators began looking at the data left behind on their phones. At around 4:39 p.m. on April 1st, the same day they entered the trail, one of the phones attempted to call the emergency number 112. After that, there was also an attempt to call 911, but the calls did not connect, reportedly because the area had no signal. That detail changed the feeling of the timeline. It suggested that, only hours after beginning the hike, something had already gone wrong. In many missing person cases, the silence of a phone is frightening. But in this case, what was more unsettling was that the phones continued to be turned on, as if someone was still searching for one final signal. Over the following days, the devices were powered on multiple times. There were further attempts to find service, but there was no successful connection. After April 5th, the iPhone belonging to Kris reportedly no longer had the correct PIN entered. That detail has led to many questions, but on its own, it does not prove who was handling the phone or why the code was no longer correct. What it does show is that the case was not simply a disappearance with no trace at all. There was a trail of digital evidence, incomplete, quiet, and deeply troubling. Then came the detail that would become the center of the case for many people: the night photos. On April 8th, the camera took around 90 pictures using flash in the darkness. The night photos are the part of this case people return to again and again, not because they answer the mystery, but because they seem so close to answering it. Some images appeared to show a dark jungle environment, possibly near a river or ravine. Some showed objects placed on rocks. One image showed the back of Kris's head, but the purpose of the photos has never been confirmed. They may have been attempts to signal for help. They may have been used to light up the area. They may have been meant to record the location, or they may have had another purpose entirely. Each flash briefly lit up the jungle, but none of those images clearly explained why the camera was being used. The phones were last turned on April 11th. After that, the digital trail ended. For weeks, searches continued. Then, on June 14th, more than 10 weeks after Kris and Lisanne vanished, a local woman found a blue backpack near a river by the village of Alto Romero. It belonged to Lisanne. Inside were the phones, the camera, cash, sunglasses, an insurance card, a water bottle, and other personal items. According to reports, many of the belongings were still in relatively good condition. That fact became another point of debate. Some saw it as strange. Others argued that the movement of water, terrain, and time could make the condition of the backpack difficult to interpret. But again, the evidence was not enough to form a firm conclusion. After the backpack was found, searchers focused more closely on the Culebra River area. Some remains and bone fragments were later discovered along the river. DNA testing confirmed they belonged to Kris and Lisanne. The discovery confirmed the most painful truth. The two young women had died. But because only limited remains were found, the exact cause of death could not be determined with certainty. There were no arrests, no trial, and no official conclusion that fully explained what happened after Kris and Lisanne entered the forest. The theory most widely accepted by investigators is that they became lost, disoriented, or injured, and that they died after spending days in dangerous conditions. A Dutch forensic researcher also suggested that violence or foul play seemed less likely than an accident or survival situation. But that does not erase the questions. Why did they go so far beyond the trail? What happened before the first emergency call at 4:39 p.m.? Why were the phones turned on again and again, but never able to connect? Why was the correct PIN no longer entered after April 5th? What was the purpose of the photographs taken in the dark? And why was only part of the evidence ever recovered? The case also raised broader concerns about safety, search efforts, and how missing person investigations are handled in remote areas. Panama's authorities faced criticism from some who believed the early response and investigation were not strong enough. But even years later, with phone records, camera images, and physical evidence, the full story remains incomplete. This case does not leave behind a clear answer. It leaves behind fragments: a call that never connected, a camera flashing in the dark, a backpack by a river, and two families forced to live with a silence no data has been able to fill. Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon left behind more evidence than many missing persons cases ever do: phones, call logs, a camera, and photographs. But evidence is not the same as understanding. The data tells us when calls were attempted, when devices were powered on, and when flashes lit up the jungle. It does not tell us what they saw, what they feared, or what choices they had left. That is why this case remains so difficult to place into one simple category. The widely accepted theory is that they became lost, injured, or trapped in dangerous conditions. But the unanswered details, the night photos, the backpack, the wrong PIN, the limited remains, keep the story from ever feeling complete. They raise questions, but they do not prove a different conclusion on their own. The camera captured brief flashes of the forest, but not the full truth of what happened there. The phones recorded attempts to reach help, but not the fear or confusion behind those calls. And years later, the question remains: were those final images a signal, a record, or simply the last fragments of two lives lost in the wilderness? The mystery of Kris and Lisanne lingers because the evidence was visible, but never complete. And sometimes, in missing person cases, the first mistake is not what people fail to find, it is what they fail to recognize in time. The next story begins on a quiet road in Vermont, where a teenager's car was found in a place that looked like an accident, until it didn't. File number 01C, the car left behind, the Brianna Maitland case. The car was found less than a mile from where Brianna Maitland had finished her shift, backed into the side of an abandoned farmhouse in Montgomery, Vermont. It was a 1985 Oldsmobile, resting at an angle against the old Dutch burn house, as if something had gone wrong on the road and ended there by accident. But Brianna was not inside. Her paychecks were still in the car. Nearby, there was loose change, a water bottle, and an unlit cigarette. Small, ordinary objects, scattered around a scene that looked simple at first glance, but became harder to explain the longer people looked at it. In the beginning, authorities did not immediately treat the car as the center of a serious missing person case. It appeared strange, but not necessarily criminal. Years later, investigators would consider a darker possibility, that the scene may have been staged to look like an accident. Brianna Alexandra Maitland was 17 years old. She lived in Vermont, and before she vanished, she was trying to build a more independent life for herself. She had left her parents' home, moved between different places, left high school, and started working toward her GED. She was not just a name in a police file. She was a teenager standing between childhood and adulthood, trying to decide what her future might look like. On March 19, 2004, the day she disappeared, Brianna had taken a GED exam. She had lunch with her mother and, according to reports, seemed happy as she talked about possible plans for college. But later, while shopping with her mother, she briefly walked away. When she returned, she seemed anxious and tense. Why that happened has never been fully explained. Just a few hours later, Brianna finished her shift at the Black Lantern Inn. Around 11:20 that night, she left in the family's Oldsmobile, reportedly alone, and from that moment on, no one could say with certainty where she went, or who may have been waiting in the dark. On March 19, 2004, Brianna Maitland's day did not begin like the beginning of a missing person case. She took her GED exam. She had lunch with her mother. According to reports, she seemed upbeat and spoke about the possibility of going to college. For a 17-year-old trying to become more independent, it may have felt like a day pointed toward the future. But there was one moment that stayed difficult to explain. While shopping with her mother, Brianna briefly left. When she came back, she appeared anxious and tense. What happened during that short time has never been fully confirmed. It may have meant nothing. It may have meant something. But in hindsight, it became one of those details that people returned to, because only hours later, Brianna would disappear. That night, she worked her shift at the Black Lantern Inn in Montgomery, Vermont. Around 11:20 p.m., she left the restaurant, reportedly driving alone in her family's 1985 Oldsmobile. After that, Brianna was never seen or heard from again. The next day, her car was found about a mile from the Black Lantern Inn, at an abandoned property known as the Old Dutchburn House. The Oldsmobile was backed into the side of the building, positioned in a way that looked like a strange accident. But Brianna was not there. At first, the scene was not immediately understood as the center of a serious missing person case. Authorities initially thought the car might have been abandoned after a drunk driving incident. It was towed away, and the area was not treated from the beginning as a possible crime scene. Sometimes, the first hours of a missing person case are the most important. And in Brianna's case, those hours passed before anyone fully understood what they were looking at. Part of the problem was that Brianna was not reported missing right away. Her roommate believed she might be somewhere else. Her mother did not know the car had already been found. It was not until March 23rd, after Brianna's mother called friends, acquaintances, and her workplace, without finding anyone who knew where she was, that she reported her daughter missing. 2 days later, on March 25th, Brianna's parents saw a photograph of the car at the Old Dutchburn House. They confirmed it was the vehicle Brianna had been driving, and from that moment, the car was no longer just an abandoned vehicle. It became the central image of the entire case. The Oldsmobile was not hidden deep in the woods. It was sitting in plain sight, pressed against an abandoned house, as if the scene wanted to be noticed. Inside the car were Brianna's 2 paychecks. Near the vehicle were loose change, a water bottle, and an unlit cigarette. According to reports, some witnesses had seen the car there during the night. Some described lights or a turn signal still being on, but no sign of Brianna. Later information also suggested that a witness may have seen a large man standing near the car's headlights, along with a silver or gray Honda Civic near the scene. That detail has been discussed, but it remains one of the elements that requires careful treatment because it has not led to a public conclusion. The longer investigators looked at the car, the harder it became to accept the simplest explanation. Was it truly an accident? Did Brianna drive there herself, or had someone placed the car in that position to make it look like something it was not? Investigators eventually moved away from the idea that Brianna had simply run away. They later concluded that the likelihood of criminal activity was very high. The FBI also considered the possibility that the scene had been staged to resemble a crash. Brianna's family believed she may have been abducted, possibly by more than one person. They pointed to the fact that she had been trained in jiu-jitsu, and they believed she would not have been easy for one person to overpower. But that remains a family belief, not a legal conclusion. Over the years, investigators received many tips. Some alleged that Brianna had been held at a house connected to local drug activity. Police searched that location and found drugs, but they did not find Brianna. Other anonymous claims suggested she had been killed, but those claims were not verified. The case was also compared to other disappearances, including Maura Murray's, which happened in New Hampshire about a month earlier. Authorities, however, have said the two cases are not connected. In 2012, investigators also examined whether serial killer Israel Keyes could have been involved, but the FBI later ruled him out. For years, the case remained open with few public answers. Then, in 2016, police announced that DNA had been recovered from Brianna's car. In 2022, Vermont State Police said that DNA matched a person who had previously been tested in the investigation. The person's identity was not released, and authorities said that individual had cooperated with investigators. Even that development did not bring a charge, an arrest, or a final explanation. In 2024, the FBI and Vermont State Police offered a reward of up to $40,000 for information that could help find Brianna. The case remains unresolved. What is known is this: Brianna left the Black Lantern Inn on the night of March 19, 2004. Her car was found at the old Dutchburn house. She was not reported missing immediately. Her vehicle later became the strongest symbol of the investigation. Authorities came to believe the possibility of foul play was very high. And Brianna has never been found. What remains unknown is almost everything after she left work. Did she drive to the abandoned house herself? Was the car staged? Was someone waiting for her? Did the DNA match hold more meaning than the public has been told? And why, after so many years, has no one been charged? For Brianna's family, this case is not only a mystery. It is a silence that began on a cold March night, after an ordinary shift, with a car that could not explain what it had witnessed. Brianna Maitland's case is haunting because the central clue was never hidden. Her car was found almost immediately, sitting in plain sight at the old Dutchburn house, in a position that looked impossible to ignore. But a visible clue is not always a clear answer. It can point in several directions at once: accident, staging, panic, or crime, without proving any of them completely. It is also a reminder that wanting independence is not the same as wanting to disappear. Brianna was 17, trying to shape her future, moving through a complicated stage of life. Those details may have made some early explanations seem possible, but they never answered the deeper question of what happened after she left work that night. The car was left behind, but the answer was not. After all these years, Brianna has still not been found. No one has been charged. And the question remains: was that car the scene of an accident, a warning, or a staged clue in a much darker story? Across all three cases, the most disturbing part is not only that someone vanished, it is how ordinary everything looked before it happened. A damaged car on a rural road, a daytime hike through a forest trail, an old vehicle pressed against an abandoned house. Each story began with something that could have been explained away, at least at first: an accident, a delay, a strange but simple mistake. But in each case, the details refuse to stay simple. Maura Murray's case turns on a few missing minutes between a crash and the arrival of help. Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon left behind phones, photos, and call logs that recorded fragments, but not the full truth. Brianna Maitland's car was found almost immediately, yet the meaning of that scene remains unresolved. These cases remind us that evidence can be visible and still unclear. A clue can be right in front of us and still fail to speak plainly. And maybe that is why stories like these stay with us. They show how fragile the first hours of an investigation can be, how quickly assumptions can shape the path forward, and how difficult it is for families when answers never arrive in a form they can hold on to. Public attention can keep a name from being forgotten, but it cannot replace certainty. The internet can analyze a timeline, a photograph, or a car, but it cannot always reach the truth. In the end, these stories are not just about disappearance. They are about silence. The silence after a phone call fails, after a car is found empty, after a person does not come home. Sometimes, danger does not announce itself. Sometimes it hides in routine, in confusion, and in the small details people only understand too late. If you want more stories like this, consider subscribing. And as always, thank you for watching. Stay safe, and pay attention to the details others overlook.
This file may be closed, but the truth is always out there. What do you think really happened? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to follow the next case. I'm Detective Frost, and this is the Cold Files.